go ahead and start recording. See, I'm still doing that. Hi, folks. So I just discovered that contrary to the instructions I had given you on my email and in the written syllabus, the online syllabus here still had the words "or by Zoom." So I've got the Zoom room open here in case there is any miscommunication about that. But yes, I had intended for all to see each other and hear each other, like in the old days, where we were all in the same classroom. So we will be on Zoom occasionally. I'm getting kicked out of the room as usual for at least one class session that I know we'll have to adapt. And if I'm sick, for instance, we may be on there. But otherwise, please plan to show your lovely faces here. How's that sound? All right. And so, if you haven't figured it out already, I'm Lisa. I'm your instructor. You can call me Dr. Hoffman or Professor Hoffman if you must, but you really don't have to. You can just call me Lisa. And it is pronounced the usual way. It's not Lessa or Lisa. It's just spelled differently. The story I was told is that when I was born, I was going to be Angela. But then my mother saw me and said, she looks like a Lisa, but not the regular kind. So that's what I am. I have no idea what the regular kind of Lisa looks like, but I have met like 5 people with my name, and it's always a really big deal when I do. So anyway, that's the story behind that. The other people you should know are in the back of the classroom. Would you please say hello? So we'll start over here. Be nice and loud, Erica.
I work in TAs. I'm Erica. My office hours are on there. Happy to help if you have questions.
So she is Monday and Tuesday mornings, slight differences in time. And
Hi everyone, my name is Vladimir. I'm a 5-year PhD student here in the EMS program. I will be helping you in this class. I'm one of the PAs. My office hours are in hybrid format, so I will be attending students in person. In office N476 is this building, 4th floor. So if you want to go there to talk, I'll be there waiting for you. Or you can connect via Zoom, that will help too. Personally, I prefer to talk in person, just because I think that some questions are hard to answer when we're talking via Zoom, but you are welcome in any of both ways. Happy to see you.
okay, I think I got the captions. That's what I need turned on, not transcript. My bad. Every time I log into Zoom, it looks different. Anyone else see this? It's like, where'd that thing go? So yes, Vladimir is his middle name. That's the story there, right?
Yes.
Yes. Do you have a story with your name, Erica? You're just Erica? Just went with it? Okay, that's good. So yes, speaking of office hours, Monday and Tuesday mornings with Erica, Thursdays and Fridays with Vladimir, either on Zoom or in person upstairs. Good luck if you can find that office. And with me on Mondays over the lunch hour and Wednesday afternoons. And I added to the online syllabus here a summary so that you can just look at by day of the week and figure out where you're supposed to go. I thought that might be a little bit easier. So to keep me from rambling too much, I do have a Lecture 1 introduction to this course. If you haven't already downloaded that, please go ahead. Let's see. This is the webpage that I sent you in email. If you don't have access to that in front of you, it's my name, lisahoffman.com, and then you can find my teaching page from there that has links to all my classes. This was a birthday present from my husband about 10 years ago, because that's what stats nerds buy each other for presents, is domains. So he also got me pilesofvariance.com, which is where my book's website is. So forever grateful for that. All right, so Lecture 1, that's what I'm in here. A nice gentle introduction. What to expect this semester, about clustered data, the big picture, and then my sales pitch to get you to come back next time. All right, so what to expect. Everybody see this okay? We're good? Zoomers, we're good? Okay. All right, so there's an expression. If you have a hammer, everything's a nail. You heard this before? I am here to tell you that everything is a nail. Everything is multi-level in some capacity. So even though this course is focused on a very specific use case for multi-level models for clustered data, meaning people who have naturally occurring groupings where you're interested in exploring why people differ and why groups differ, even though that's the context, learning this as a general methodology pays dividends for everywhere. So who is in the structural equation modeling class this semester? We got one person? Anyone else? Or factor analysis or item response theory? These are models you've heard of too. Guess what? Those are items nested in persons. It's a multi-level model. So once you start to see the layers of sampling that exist everywhere in life and in research, then everything looks like a multi-level model and every nail needs a hammer. So actual benefits of learning this are not just tied to this particular use case, is what I'm trying to tell you. You can do better research if you understand methodology that can best describe your sampling designs and represent variables at the levels at which they're measured faithfully. A lot of people have this kind of data but don't know what to do with it. So learning these models can be a way to get more lines on your CV if you can help people analyze data and write papers as a result. And actual money, because sometimes people pay you to do things. Right, Vladimir?
Yeah.
Vladimir's been paid to do multi-level models. Isn't that better than washing dishes?
For sure, yeah.
Yeah, that's what he got paid to do his first year here, and since then he's been paid to do multi-level analysis of people. You traded up, my friend.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. Erica, has anyone paid you yet? Yeah, not. She's like, okay, I want to get in on this. We should talk. But yes, money or authorship credit, I think, are both forms of currency that we can appreciate. So how we're going to do this, I'm focused on accessibility and mastery. I try not to be punitive. I try to trust folks. I try to believe that your motivations for being here are pure and that you're all grown-ups who can manage your time, and I start from that as my perspective. So I'm not going to make you do things that are scary. Statistics courses often get a bad rap because they're filled with like hand calculations, or if you have to memorize equations or do derivations or things. We're not doing any of that, okay? This is a very much applied, hands-on, how to analyze data and interpret the results kind of class. It's not a theoretical statistics class. There are those on campus, and if that's your jam, go over to the stat department and I'm sure they can help you out. And I view it as our jobs to make sure that you have what you need to be able to do the things we're asking you to do. That means there is no need to resort to AI for help. If you find yourself asking ChatGPT how to do your homework, please stop and talk to one of us. The thing is that sometimes it gets it right and sometimes it doesn't. And when you're first learning what you're doing, it's hard to tell the difference. So please don't feel like you need to resort to such things. We will help you. That is our job. So the way that the material will be organized in this class is we have, let's see here, a unit, as I deem it, is a combination of a lecture and usually one or more examples. Relative to what I had done 2 years ago, I have backed this down. The feedback that I got on those evaluations was too much, too much, too much. It would have been better to slow down and go over things more thoroughly as opposed to every possible way that these models can be used. So I took some stuff out. So we're down to just 5 units. The way that I organize the material is that I have lecture slides. Everything is yellow in multi-level classes. All my classes are color-coded. And they are more conceptual in nature. And that's for my own benefit, so that when I post my stuff, I know what I'm talking about. Like if I see the slides are blue, I know I'm talking to the intermediate class. Like it's just easier that way in my head. Anywho, the slides present concepts. So the what and the why. And I deliberately keep those separate from example documents, which are going to be PDFs that have annotated syntax and output that we will walk through together. So even though there's computers in front of you, you don't necessarily need to be running things. Like I have it all compiled so that we can focus on what stuff means and you're not trying to keep up as like, what did she just run? Where did that come from? Where did that go? Because I've seen that go sideways very badly in courses and I don't want that to happen to us. The software then is in this document. So I don't have a lot of software in the lecture slides. I have maybe a couple slides just from something else. I'm going to be teaching these models in Stata or R. Those are the examples. And SAS is also provided because that was what I first started teaching in and I have it, so I'm just going to give it to you. I know some folks still use SAS. Does anyone here use SAS? Anybody? No? Okay, then you can ignore that. Anyone here use Stata? Couple folks. Anyone here use R? Okay, I think we hit everybody, right? I don't care what you use. Pick whatever you'd like. All of the material is outside Icon. It's at this lovely green website. And if you're looking at this and thinking, Yeah, 1997 called and it wants its HTML back. You're not wrong. It is a very antiquated looking page. But I do it this way because everything is on one page and I can update it. So I have information stuff at the top. I have links to things that you will need. I have online documentation for the programs and the routines that we're going to use. And then everything for the class is going to be posted here. After each class, I will post a link to the video that the recording is currently taking. So I use, let me show it to you real quick in case anyone's curious. I don't record within Zoom. This is a little program called OBS. It's free. And why I use this is because you can tell it what mic to pick up, what audio to pick up. It's going to be picking up the audio of the room here. I think it'll just be fine for the desktop there. And it captures the whole display. So I don't have to worry about which app is currently being captured. I can just capture the whole thing. So the videos that I'm taking will have the screen share. It will have my voice. And if you talk loud enough, your voices. If that makes you uncomfortable, then like whisper to somebody, then have someone talk loud. We could do that. And it's going to be hosted on YouTube. So I keep all my stuff out there because if it's buried in Icon, you don't get access to it after the semester's over. So this is for future reference because future you might want to come back to these materials in 2 years when you need to do something. I've also gotten a lot of opportunities from people who find me through my teaching materials and then they ask me to do things. So for instance, I got a free trip to Europe, invited to give a keynote address at a conference because the person organizing the conference needed to teach a course on longitudinal models and they Googled how to teach longitudinal and my stuff came up. And they liked it enough to invite me. So that's just an example of how I benefit from it. But yes, the recordings are to benefit you as well. All right, so what are you going to be doing is what I want to talk about next. Before I do that, let me take a breath and ask, how are we doing? 2 thumbs. Oh, you know the thumbs already. Okay, so for the uninitiated, we use a thumb scale in this class that ranges continuously from terrible to meh to good. So terrible would be like,
What's 2 thumbs?
2 thumbs would be just amplifying the scale. I think you're taking it up to 20 instead of 10 maybe. So we're okay. I'm shooting for at least meh because it's the first week of class. Yeah, and I couldn't believe I had to send my kid to school in pants in August. Like, what is that about? I was like, did I wake up in October? Did I sleep that long? No, that's. So we're okay. All right, good deal. So what are we going to be doing? 3 things, 3 kinds of things in this class. In order of complexity, starting with what I call formative assessments. These are little activities designed to give us a structured review. I believe the TAs are going to go over the answers. Yep, they're like, yes, people do that. It's optional, but it gives them some practice to be a little bit spontaneous and get in front of everybody. This is going to vary in terms of what's in it. So I'm upping the ante. I have 6 of these planned. It's 3 points each for doing them, 2 points if you're late. And it will have vocabulary, equations, conceptual questions, examples like case studies. Here's a researcher who wants to do this. Here's what they tried to do. Where did they go wrong? And it may include correcting AI-generated text. That's one of my favorite activities because if you don't know what you're talking about, sometimes the answers sound perfectly valid. And if you do, you start to see where the holes are. So we may do some of that as well. And as always, I love responding to reviewer 2, so we may do some of that. So the idea is just to give you a sense as to where you're at, and if you can't answer the question, then that's a sense as to where you need to review on your own. There's no right answers necessarily. I may have some multiple choice questions, but they'll mostly be free response. The idea is just to give you sort of a roadmap as to like what's the big picture, and to help you review specifics that help the big picture fall into place, like the notation. Like if you don't learn the notation, it's going to be really hard to keep track of what we're talking about. So just a little bit of extra practice on that kind of stuff can be beneficial. But it doesn't matter how well you do. You will get the points for doing it, so long as there's an honest effort. Okay? And if your answer is, I tried, I couldn't find this, can we please talk more about it? That's a valid answer too. TAs, do you want to add anything about that? Formative assessments?
No.
No?
If you have any question about those questions, you can ask us. We can talk about those things. We won't give you answers, but we can try to process what we are covering.
May I
Yes.
add a comment as a
Sure.
student?
Yeah.
I found these very helpful this past spring when I think that's when you first implemented this.
Oh, so this is, I'm putting together sort of the bridge activities from generalized and the formative assessment.
It sounded like the bridge.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I'm going to head more in that direction. So I did an experiment in a spring class with a different kind of set of questions that seems to have gone well. So we will, it's merging that into this.
Cool.
But yes. So there's 6 of those, about, every 3 weeks or so. Homework, but much less than usual. 3. Only 3. So the idea of this is that each of you will log into a custom online homework system. Some of you are familiar with this, some of you are not. And there will be an assignment waiting for you. You will download a data set. Each of you has your own data set. But they were simulated using a common story where your ID is the random seed. So you will have a series of research questions to answer with the data, and you will use the examples that I give you to help generate the code. So I will give you in the examples like a very close template as to what it would look like, what you would need to adapt to make it work for you. And this homework system has 2 kinds of questions. I will give you a chance to practice with it with homework 0, which is going to be over the syllabus and it will be for a point of extra credit. But one section is going to ask for numeric input. So for instance, I'll have you fit a model and say, like, what's the fixed intercept? What's beta 0? And you'll find the answer in your output and you'll enter it into a text box. If you are right, it turns green. If you are wrong, the box is highlighted in red and you keep entering until you get it right. So you will immediately know if you're on the right track. And you try as many times as it takes until you get it to green. I don't care, I don't even keep track. So you get instant feedback on those kinds of questions, and usually about half the points in an assignment are of that kind. But the more important ones, though, are what I call results section, and these are paragraph completion type questions. So for instance, if you have a slope for a predictor, I might ask you via a drop-down menu, is that slope significantly positive, significantly negative, non-significantly positive, or non-significantly negative? And so that's the interpretation of the number that you already know is correct. Or in this class, I might ask you, is that a between cluster relationship or is that a within cluster relationship? Between cluster at level 1, between cluster at level 2, but within cluster at level 1, within cluster at level 2. Like we start to drill vocabulary with these labels of things. And because it's multiple choice, you don't get immediate feedback. That would make a lot of sense. But after your assignment has been submitted for a grade, you do see what you got right. So correct paragraph completions will be in green font, incorrect will be in red italics. So then you can see what it should have been and ask us at any point to go over it with you if you're unsure as to why you got it wrong. So there's 3 of these planned. 48 points, and you are judged on accuracy for these. So you want to try and do as well as you can, but each individual question is worth a fraction of a point. So if you miss a couple, no biggie. And then, as I mentioned, there will be a homework 0. I'm waiting to see if anyone drops or adds this class this week. We'll see who comes back on Thursday, for instance. I should have it ready by then. And you get 1 point of extra credit for answering questions about the syllabus. That way I know that you know how to use the system and that I've got your name right in the system. That's the other part of it that can sometimes be tricky. And I'm upping the stakes. If you turn in an assignment late, it's a 3-point deduction. It used to be 2. During COVID, it was like 1, but now I'm being all mean. Do you know why?
Too much work at the end of the semester.
Too much work? Future you does not want to talk to current you about this, right? Don't do that to yourself. I also know that things with soft deadlines get pushed and things with hard deadlines don't. And I want to put this in the hard pile, like I want to be that. But I know that shit happens, right? You may have the best of intentions and something happens that pulls your focus away from that. You can still come back from this. Like if you turned in everything late, you'd still have a shot at a B. Like it's nothing you can't come back from. If something happens, let me know, right? I'm here to work with you. In fact, let me see here. I don't think I have it on a slide, but in my syllabus, if you look at when things are due and you see a week in which you have an assignment due and you're like, oh, I'm going to be out of town at a conference, or I'm going to be taking comps that week, or I'm going to be doing whatever, if you ask me at least 2 weeks in advance, I can extend the deadline for you. So just Try to be planful would be the only thing. But if shit happens, let me know. Otherwise, 3 points late. So who's doing math right now? How many points are we up to?
You didn't say we had to do math.
66.
Yeah, where'd the others go, huh? All my classes are worth 100 points. I don't want to like do the math to make it harder than that. It's just 100. So, a project. That's what you're doing the rest of the time. So, I wanted to be very much upfront about this in case that changes your plans for the semester. The feedback that I got last time was that more folks would have preferred to spend more time actually analyzing their own data and getting help with that rather than doing canned data assignments in the homework system, so that's what we're going to do. So the good news, a presentation, not a paper. A conference-style presentation, like 15 minutes with 5 minutes for questions kind of thing. That's the end result of this. You can work on your own or you can pair up with somebody. And I will need to know your plans for that, basically if you're solo or in a pair, by about the 13th of October. And then I'll figure out how many days worth of presentations are needed. There are 10 people in the class, and so I'm expecting at least 2 days, but possibly 3. They will be towards the end of the semester. And even though there are no do-overs in life, there are do-overs in this class. If your presentation does not go well, you can record another one and submit it as a revision. Because what good is feedback if you don't get a chance to actually implement it to improve things? In your careers, especially in academia, you're going to be spending much of your time responding to feedback, right? You get your course evaluations and kids tell you how much they liked it or didn't like certain things. You get your manuscripts and reviewers 2 and 3 want to have a word about your choices. You get your grant proposal back, maybe, if there's grants anymore. And the reviewers on that will have words for you, right? So learning how to take feedback and make something better is an important part of the process. Based on experiences in doing these kinds of things in other classes, I've introduced a new middle layer to this process. So we're going to have a written outline that is submitted. So basically, what data set are you going to use? What are the variables? What are your questions? And then I can help you figure out what family of models or what examples would most map onto that. If you're somebody who has a more complex design in the data you care about than what we've covered in class, that's okay. I have a lot of multi-level examples from other things that I can point you towards. And so that can be something I can help sort of shape into what is doable given the constraints of the class. The next point of contact will be something I'm calling a check-in, where I will have expected some of the analyses to be started so that you know what you're going to present. In other words, so you're not starting the presentation the day it's due. Not that anyone would ever do that, right? That never happens in grad school. So you will have to have at least the results, like what are you going to present? Is this stage so that I can weigh in and say, oh, you're not presenting that, or good job, yes, this is what you should be talking about. And then we get to the presentation itself, and each of you will be doing a peer review of someone else's presentation. Just a little, what did you like? What would you recommend? What did you learn? Those kinds of questions. Each of these things will have specific instructions, requirements, and rubrics presented later. So I will tell you exactly what I want. So how do we feel about that? Some people are excited? Okay. In a little bit, I'm just giving you a heads up, I will do the thing where we go around and say who we are and all that stuff. But I will be asking you about data at that point. So start thinking about if you don't already have a purpose for this class, like what you might do with this. And yes, there are many, many data sets available that are public online. I would really like it if this helps your careers. I would really like it if the data are meaningful to you, if there's something that you are going to want to work on anyway. Like if you're already working on a research project and you want free statistical consulting through this class, yes, do that. Okay, so what kind of data? Multi-level data. That's really the only requirement. You're doing a multi-level analysis of some kind. Clustered would be ideal, but certain kinds of longitudinal data have the same features as clustered data, so we could work with that if need be. This will be something that you and I have a conversation and come to an agreement about over these documents and whatnot. And as I said, I'll be happy to help you figure out what kinds of examples would be most useful to that. Okay, so that's where the rest of the points are coming from. So my job then, to summarize, is to answer your questions. I am fine with your questions in whatever modality you feel like, but during class is optimal so that other people can hear the answers. Because one of two things is going to happen if you ask a question. Someone's going to be like, oh, thank God they asked that question, I had the same question, and then you make them feel better. Or someone's like, wait, I think I know the answer. And then they hear my answer or the TA's answer and they're like, oh, I got it right. And then you made their day because you just reinforce that they're learning something. So there's really no bad outcome of asking questions. In office hours, it's in a group format. That means first come, first serve, show up. If you want to just come to office hours to work on homework, I've had people do that, like just they build that into their schedule. And then that way, if you have questions, you can get them answered immediately. A lot of times folks show up and they end up having the same question. So it becomes more efficient just to be able to answer it with everyone in attendance. But if you're shy or the times of office hours don't work for you, I'm happy to hold individual appointments with folks as well. On Zoom preferably, since I'm very rarely in the building. And the TAs are available to answer questions, right? So you can answer questions over email or office hours. If you are preferring to talk to them and not me, you won't hurt my feelings. But I am paid to do this a lot more than they are, to be fair. So I kind of feel like it should come to me first. But if you go to their office hours and you already have like a rapport and you've been working on something together and you want to talk to them, cool. I'm not going to be jealous or any of that. So your job is to ask the questions, review the material frequently, and don't wait till the last minute if you get stuck on something. Don't wait till the last minute, and if you get stuck on something, don't be afraid to ask for help. My undergrad stats professor used to have a 15-minute rule. If you're stuck on one question for 15 minutes and it's not turning green, stop. Stop and ask for help. It's easiest if you send a screenshot. So send a snippet of your code and the output and like the error message and what you're trying to do, because then we don't have to download the files, run the models, regenerate the output. Like if we can just see what you're looking at, that would be the most optimal way to do it. And the readings is the other thing you can be doing. The textbook that we're using, I'm going to be quite honest with you, I don't love it. I don't love it. It's fine. It's hard, I would say, in spots. Like when I was first learning it, I think I spent about a page, like an hour to read it. And I had someone to ask questions to, and that really helped. The problem is that there's a lot of multi-level textbooks that get pieces of things wrong. And I haven't had a chance to vet some of the newer books, and so the one I picked is one that I am familiar with, and I trust most of it. But there's also additional readings that are more modern on the list that are going to contradict the book in spots, actually. So I have my own way of talking about things. I've picked out articles that I think are either really understandable, like from a tutorial standpoint, or they touch on an issue that you need to understand that isn't covered in the book as well. But if you're not sure whether you have the time to do the readings, the other stuff comes first. So coursework comes first, attendance comes first. The readings are there as a supplemental kind of thing. Unfortunately, there is not an online version that the library could purchase for me like I've used in other courses, but they are getting a physical copy that they'll keep at the main library course reserves. If you want to spend the money on the book, you said it was about $50 on
50 for a Kindle version, 200 if you want the hard copy on Amazon.
Yeah, and
won't-
it's got to be cheaper than that. So, yeah, he has the book. It's here if anyone wants to look at it.
It's going back to the engineering library.
Since you bought a copy. All right. So, questions or thoughts so far? Still. We're okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right. All right. So, the thing about attendance, I trust you. You're grown-ups. Either you want to be here or someone told you that you want to be here. One of the two. So if you need to miss class sometimes, okay. Like I'm not your mom. I'm going to trust you that you have other reasons that are, you have to balance all the other things in your life. If you ghost me, then I reserve the right to check in. Okay, like if I haven't seen you in 3 weeks, be like, dude, are you coming or not? That being said, please don't come here really sick. Please don't make us sick. I know things are weird post-COVID in terms of what sick is, but You don't need to make yourself come to campus because you're afraid of missing out. That's what the recordings are for. So you're not going to miss anything. The reason that I do that on YouTube, as I said, public facing is one reason, but I'm not sure if folks are aware of this. The videos and the transcript that is automatically generated are searchable on YouTube. So if you open the transcript and hit like Control F for find, and for instance, when I teach, I often do this gimmick that I had a professor do in college where he would say homework question, but he would cough to like make sure folks were awake to hear it, like homework question, like that. Like if you search the transcript for homework question, like it will go exactly in the video to where I said that. And then you can review like that specific vocabulary word or idea or whatever. So to me, the videos are not meant to take the place of class. Because if you have a question 10 minutes in, like what are you going to do? You're going to stop watching, email it to us, and then wait a day to like rewatch? That's not very efficient. But if you can't come to class, then it's better than nothing. I think that looking for specific things to review when you need to is the way that the videos are best used. So if you get started in homework and you're like, oh wait, where did she talk about how to do this? Then you can go look, and then there's a reason to be watching as opposed to just like a passive dump of information. So does that make sense? That's the idea. And yeah, it generates transcripts that are ish of what I said. They're not perfect, but hopefully they're close enough to where you can tell what I meant. In terms of scheduling changes, so if I'm sick or if the weather's really bad, I will move to Zoom only. I will let you know via email and by icon announcements by 9 a.m. on those days at the absolute latest. And also, I think it's one class right now, but there might be more where comprehensive exams are held in this classroom, and so we have to leave. So those days will move to Zoom only as well. All right, software. As I mentioned, you got to do either Stata or R if you want to follow the examples. SAS is also possible, but I'm not going to be featuring it in the examples themselves. I always get this question, why not SPSS? SPSS can do mixed models. I have examples of that I can send you, but no other classes in our program use SPSS, so it's not helpful to learn it in that if you're going to be taking other courses. My story is that I grew up with SPSS in graduate school. I picked up SAS when I started learning mixed models. I started teaching workshops where no one there knew SAS, they only knew Stata. So I had to learn Stata like on the fly while I was teaching a workshop in the summer. That was fun. And I'm begrudgingly learning R. I'm not a fan. I know there's a lot of folks who love R, I'm just not one of them. So that means that you may see me doing things like making variables or recoding variables a different way than you've seen other people do it. For instance, I don't use the tidyverse. I have nothing to do with that. Everything is base R. I also write my code to be as transparent as possible, not necessarily as efficient as possible. So that being said, if you see me doing stuff that is weird and you know how to do it a better way, by all means, you're not going to hurt my feelings. If you have tips, like, oh, here's a way to simplify what this code is doing, please share them with me. I steal stuff from Vladimir and Erica all the time. Because I see their stuff and I'm like, oh, that's better. Let me do it that way. So code is a work in progress, always. If you need to use Stata, it's on the virtual desktop. If you need to use R, you can put that on your own devices. That's the reason why. If you're interested in adding to your technical skills section of your CV, maybe learning how to do things in multiple packages would be a good idea. And if you're brand new to software, I have some resources posted for the intermediate class from last year that can help you get started, but I don't think anyone here is in that group this time. Occasionally I have folks that haven't had much exposure to software. So here are some things to consider if you're still choosing. My biggest complaint against R is the lack of documentation. Like the packages sometimes are so poorly documented you can't tell what anything is doing, whereas like Stata has documentation that's very thorough and very standardized. Oh, that's creepy. Yeah, the lights just
That
went
was
out of
creepy.
there.
Like
It's a busy day in the neighborhood here, the first week of classes. There we go. They heard me. We're busy. See, we're watching TV out here. So, the other thing I found is that R sometimes gives impossible results. It depends on who made the package. So I've seen models that should not be identified have numbers come out. I'm like, I don't know how that happened, but it shouldn't have. My husband, when he's taught with R, has returned probabilities of 1.2.
Cool.
So it's free, But there's another charming expression I like, you get what you pay for. So free is free. So what are we going to talk about here then in this class? So what I would like for you to have known already is to be really good with regression, because that's where we're starting. And if you're like, yeah, I used to be, but it's been a minute, we'll get you there. If you need more structured review, especially for interaction terms, that's going to be a big thing in this semester. I have links to coursework in which those things are covered. So I teach intermediate, that's the course right after this one. Generalized versions of regressions are also in a course I just finished last spring. Here are the topics, though, for the units. So we're starting with just what's multi-level data and why do we care. Level 2 predictors. So in our context, we have individuals who are nested in naturally occurring groups, which we're going to call clusters. So these would be predictors that have to do with the cluster. So for instance, if I have children who come from different schools, a school level variable, like whether it's a rural or urban school district or something like that, would be a variable, or whether it's a private or public school, something that's a school characteristic. The good news is that that's really straightforward, relatively speaking. It's just standard regression. Level 1 predictors are a whole thing. That's individual people information. And what makes it so tricky is that anything that is measured about a person is probably also measured about their group. So a classic example, free and reduced lunch status for children is used as a proxy for socioeconomic status. Whether that's a good idea or not, it commonly is. But children are not randomly assigned to their schools in the United States. It's based on where you live, for the most part. And so to the extent that schools are funded by neighborhoods and more impoverished neighborhoods have more children who get free lunch, then schools differ in the proportion of students who get free lunch. And it turns out that matters incrementally beyond just whether a given child gets free lunch. If you go to a school that has fewer resources, that's bad for all the students in that school, regardless of how much resources they personally have. So figuring out for level 1 predictors, what is a person thing and what is a cluster thing, and how do they both contribute at the same time, that's the tricky part. And that's going to be like, 6 weeks or something. That's the tricky part. Random slopes and cross-level interactions, those are words you don't know yet. You will. Fixed versus random is something we'll talk about quite a bit. The short version of it, a fixed effect is what you're used to calling the intercept and slopes in a regression model. Like if I told you the slope is 2 for this predictor, you could say as x goes up by 1, y goes up by 2. Cool. That 2 applies equally to everybody. It's fixed. But what if it depended on which school you went to? If I go to this school, maybe my slope is 1. If I go to this school, maybe my slope is 3. That can happen. The effect of getting free lunch could differ based on which school you're in, for instance. That's called a random slope, where if fixed is a constant that applies equally to everybody, random is a variable. And so when I teach regression, I say fixed intercept and fixed slope the whole time because I know this distinction is coming, but I'm kind of in the minority on that. So everything that you've learned about regression parameters up to this point are fixed effects. I can almost guarantee it. So we'll have random slopes, and then these create additional kinds of variability that we can explain with interaction terms. And so that's why understanding interactions in the context of single-level regression is an important skill for that. And all of these units then have a homework to go with them. Unit 5 does not. This is an extension for a different kind of sampling design that has crossing, and we'll see examples of that in just a second. And after that, then it's project time. So what got dropped? I can't believe how much I had shoehorned into the previous version after looking at it in hindsight, but we had a unit on generalized versions of these models that I'm not going to do this time. Not everybody has had the single level versions of those, and so it sets up for sort of like an uneven playing field, so to speak. And the multivariate models require a different kind of software with a very different kind of language, and so it's a separate thing. But if you're curious, the 2003 version is still available. So I always keep like the version of the class from the last time up, just in case there's things that we can't get to or whatever. So all that stuff is still out there. And if your project involves these kinds of models, then I can direct you towards the resources that should help. Okay, how are we doing? Yeah, still okay? Okay, we're almost at the talking part. I mean, you guys, just one of me. I know, almost. Well, some people get nervous, so I want to like make sure that you're like not taken aback by surprise. So what does clustered mean? This is one of those words that has 8,000 synonyms. I say clustered, clustering. Nesting is another one, grouping or hierarchies, basically. The key idea here is that there is more than one dimension of sampling happening simultaneously in your study. So you've sampled over students, for instance, but in order to get enough students to do your project, you had to go to multiple schools. Well, then you've inadvertently sampled over schools too. And how do we make sure that we represent all of that at the same time? So the term multi-level, like level, that's a dimension of sampling. Just think of it that way. Multi-level modeling, MLM. So what these models are for is to predict outcomes from 2 or more sampling dimensions simultaneously. And they can be nested or they can be crossed, which we'll talk about. If you were to take this class from a different department, it would be called something else. So general linear mixed effects models is what a statistician might call that. I believe that's what it's called in design of experiments as well. Towards the end of that class, I believe. Random coefficient models is what it might be called over in statistics. Random effects and latent variables are the same exact thing, by the way. So when you're learning structural equation modeling, you're also still learning multi-level modeling. Classic in education, a lot of folks use the term HLM for hierarchical linear models. There's a software package in a book that go by those names. It's Radbush and Breich. But if you've heard the term hierarchical regression, that is not a synonym. That's not the same thing, just very closely worded. And I have a point here that most of what we consider for these models, I would refer to as univariate in the sense that we're predicting one outcome variable at a time. We're just doing it in multiple levels of sampling. There is such a thing as multi-level structural equation modeling that allows you to predict multiple kinds of outcomes simultaneously and address missing predictors, but that's a whole nother thing. So that gets real crazy real quick, right, TAs? They've both been through that. Like, yeah, don't make me help with that. I don't want to. But not in this class. We're going to start at the beginning. So examples. 2-level sampling designs, for instance. Students nested in classrooms or teachers. That's the classic one in education. It's almost impossible to do research in education without multi-level models. Everything is some kind of nested sample. Anyone here from the medical school? Anyone? No? Patients nested in doctors or clinics. We have clients nested in therapists, maybe, as another one. Particularly if you're in a group therapy kind of setting, that's kind of a big deal, who's in your group. Citizens nested in countries. So if you're taking a sample of folks, of respondents, so to speak. They can have 3 levels that are nested. So if I had students from multiple classrooms and teachers from multiple schools, then students would be level 1, classes or teachers would be level 2, and schools would be 3. If you have multiple hospitals involved in a medical setting, this one, citizens nested in years, nested in countries. Vladimir has a project that's sort of like this, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about Rong's project very briefly, her
Yes.
sampling design?
Yeah, of course. We are analyzing vocational interest among students in the US. That's a longitudinal study because we have students between 2005 and 2019. Those students are nested in states and nested in years. So we have a 3-level, multi-level longitudinal model. And we have different students over time within the same state. So in our case, we have states at level 3, years or time at level 2, and students at level 1.
Yep, that's a complex one. Yep. So these are all nested. There's also something called cross-classification. And that's if you can't figure out which way the nesting goes, it's probably crossed instead. So a classic one that you'll see in many multi-level textbooks is if you have students who are surveyed from different schools, and you also know what neighborhoods they live in, but not everybody who lives in the same neighborhood goes to the same school and vice versa. So this would still be a 2-level design, but it actually has 2 different kinds of level 2 samplings, because you have differences across schools and you have differences across neighborhoods, and kids are nested in both. Responses are nested within subjects and items. So if you give a test and everybody gets the same items on the test, then responses to an item are nested in items because some items are easier than others. Responses are also nested in people because some people have more ability in answering the items or a stronger trait guiding their answers to the items. And subjects and items are crossed. That's a very common design. There's a whole class that uses that type of design called generalizability theory or G theory. That's the same thing. Multi-level models can analyze data from those kinds of designs. If you have a reliability study, if you have people or targets being rated by multiple people, so each rating then is a function of who did the rating, like some judges are stricter than others, and who are you rating? Like targets should be different from each other. So that's another one where you have a crossing. And when time is involved, because if you're studying kids growing over time, they don't stay in the same classroom. They move. So then we have something like occasions nested in students, and occasions also nested in classes, and students in classes are crossed because they move. So there's a whole bunch of them. It could get even worse. So I had a project once where I had raters that were nested within children and raters. And then the raters themselves were nested in different locations. It was a foster care system where characteristics of the kids were being reported on by the grown-ups in charge of them. But the grown-ups were grouped into different foster homes. So then we have that level of dependency too. So it's a 3-level design, partially crossed. Yeah, you get the thing here. So these are just some examples. And now is the point. I'm going to hit pause on the recording so we don't violate FERPA. Unpause. There we go. Now we can go back to the program. In terms of how these models relate to other things you might have known, here's another classification system that I find useful to think about. So model names, one dimension that people name things by is the distinction of general versus generalized, as in like general linear models or generalized linear models. So general actually has a very specific meaning. Contrary to what you would think, it is models where the residuals, after being predicted by your predictor variables, are supposed to be normal, conditionally normal. That's what general means. So a traditional regression model, an analysis of variance model, any combination thereof, that's general linear models. The way I would think about it in terms of the contents is that those models contain only fixed effects, not random effects. The slopes and the intercepts are constant, and there's only one dimension of sampling, which means we have to keep track of all the differences across people and how many differences remain after the predictors, but there's only like one source of variability because there's only one source of sampling. The same is true in what I call generalized models, and ized means some kind of not normal. So these are regression models for binary outcomes, for categorical outcomes, for count outcomes, for skewed outcomes, that kind of thing. And that's a separate course that I teach. But the common thread, though, is that it's still for only one dimension of sampling. So like logistic regression, Poisson or count regression, negative binomial regression, those kinds of things are still for one dimension of sampling. What we're picking up then is the idea of how does the model need to extend if you have multiple dimensions of sampling. So this is us. And that's where we pick up the term mixed. The term mixed as a definition means the model contains not only fixed effects, like the slope is 2 and it's 2 for everybody, but also random effects, meaning the slope can vary based on what cluster you're in as a new idea. So these models then have different kinds of variance that directly map onto the different kinds of sampling. Because if you have multiple students from multiple schools, for instance, the kids are going to differ from each other. That was the point. But also the schools are going to differ. Some schools have better outcomes. Some schools have more challenges. Some schools have more resources. So all the ways that schools differ from each other is one source of variability that you can enter predictors and try to explain. all the reasons students differ from each other is then a second source of variability that for which you can enter predictors and try to explain. So multiple dimensions of sampling is where we pick up the term mixed, which is the addition of random effects that are different kinds of variance that correspond to the different kinds of sampling. And the term linear that shows up in all of these means a model that takes this form of slope times variable plus slope times variable. It doesn't have like logs or e's or other stuff in it. It's an additive model. That's what linear means in this context. Vocabulary. So level 2 and level 1, you're going to hear these a lot this semester. And I'm probably going to screw it up for a while because I just finished a year of longitudinal models in which time is level 1 and person is level 2. Not this year. This year, people are level 1 and clusters are level 2. That's the where we're going to start here. So words you should memorize. Put these together in your head. Level 2 goes with between, goes with inter. Level 1 goes with within, goes with intra. If you hang on to those 3 labels, that will get you covered. The only thing that varies then is between and within what, or inter or intra what. So in this class, we would talk about level 2 between cluster differences, or intercluster differences, reasons why schools differ from each other, for instance. Level 1 is within clusters, so within a school, across the students in the school, intra-cluster differences. And we can have level 3 and level 4, but this is enough for now. The hardest part about this is that any measure of a variable that occurs per person at level 1 is not just a level 1 thing. It is a level 2 thing too. And that's the whole reason that we need multi-level modeling in the first place. To the extent that people are not randomly assigned to their clusters are likely to differ from each other systematically in not only your outcome, but also in the predictors. So we got to make sure that the model respects that. So a between cluster variable would be the idea that some schools, for instance, have better math outcomes than other schools. We just got the ISASP results back for our school, and you can see what proportion of students were advanced or proficient or whatever. And fortunately for my kid, he goes to Wickham Elementary. It's one of the higher performing schools in Iowa, for whatever that's worth, right? Schools differ from each other for reasons, lots of reasons. Clusters will differ from each other for reasons. Let's take a different context, the therapy context, right? Counseling. So if I'm a therapist and I lead a group therapy session, then are all sessions going to go equally well? Like, are all groups going to work equally well? Maybe not. And it could be because of the person who's in charge of the group. It could be because of the particular combination of personalities that you've got in the group, right? But there's reasons why some groups would have different outcomes. So you can see this in a lot of contexts as to like where people are not randomly assigned to their group. Anything that you think is a person thing is a group thing too, always. Within groups, then, some students perform higher in math than other students. Some clients are more, what's the word I want? They do what they're supposed to. Fidelity. What's that word? I always make it up as fiddle. It's not a real word. They engage in their activities with more fidelity. There we go. So all of these things are happening simultaneously. Handle. That's what multi-level models do. They handle this. And I have this in quotes here because whenever you read the word handle in a scientific paper, it means they don't know what they're talking about. It's an empty word. You will see that multi-level models handle things, such as multiple dimensions of sampling. How do they handle it is what we're talking about the rest of the semester, but the too long didn't read version is by explicitly quantifying additional sources of variability and leftover variability after predictors for each dimension of sampling. That's how. In the few moments that we have left, yes, I'm keeping an eye on the clock. Let me give you something a little more concrete to hang on to. So, in the models that we're going to talk about, I talk about them as having 2 sides. And this is a heuristic that I find very useful for multi-level models. It starts to break down for other kinds sometimes, but for this class it will work. Each kind of model has 2 sides. Model for the means is the side that I guarantee you're used to thinking about. Like if you took a regression class and you're talking about the regression model, you're worried about what are the predictors? Do they just have main effects? Do they have linear effects and nonlinear effects? Do they have interaction terms? Like what goes into my model to best predict my outcome? And that's usually theoretically or empirically driven. What makes that happen are the fixed effects. Each predictor variable gets an estimated slope that gives its contribution to the prediction of the outcome. Cool, we're still gonna have that. And it's gonna function pretty much the same as what you're used to. The new side is what I call the model for the variance. And this concerns the residuals and also something called random effects. Synonyms for this idea is stochastic if you want to sound fancy, or error if you don't. It's the leftover part of the outcome that we don't know why it's there, even after controlling for all the predictors. But leftover is more complicated. So residuals is what I call the E value at the end of a regression equation. I'll show you an example of that in a second. And you were told, when you took regression, perhaps even from me, that you had to believe certain things about the E's. There's 3 things you had to believe. Remember what they are? We'll do a little review.
One is normally distributed.
Normally distributed, that's the big one. There's one that goes with it. The idea of a normal distribution has a mean and a variance.
Centered zero?
Say it again?
Centered zero?
Centered zero, not necessarily. Actually, I'll take that back. Yes, residuals have a mean of 0. That's what you're going for, because what their mean is already covered by the fixed part of the model. Yep. If I only have one variance estimated, what's another way of saying that? Fancy word, starts with an H.
Heterogeneous? No,
Close.
homogeneous.
Homoscedasticity,
Oh, damn.
or homogeneity of variance. It's a big, long
The
word.
big words.
Yeah, I know. You know what I say? Constant. Variance is constant. The E's are equally spread out along the regression line no matter where you are. The model works equally well. So you're told normal distribution, constant variance, and the big one with respect to this class starts with an I. I-N. D.
Independent?
Hey, we'll play hangman. Independent. So what does that mean? The E's are unrelated.
Mhm.
If I am part of the same schooling system or the same therapy group or the same clinic, are the E's going to be related as much in my group as with someone else?
Mhm.
Probably more in my group because of whatever common experiences, all the reasons why people are not randomly assigned. So the E's are not going to be independent, at a minimum. In this class, we're focusing on models in which they are supposed to be normal with constant variance. The extensions to get away from that are the generalized world. But what if it's not true then? What if your E's aren't independent? Do you take your ball and go home? Like, nope, sorry, can't use the model. My bad. No, you pick something else. And so this is the part we're used to making assumptions about. Now we get to make choices. It's not just that E has to be this or else. It's like, well, what else do we need to make it work? So this is the main way that multi-level models differ from traditional single-level regression models, is that they have these extra components to represent variability because there's extra layers of sampling that people vary across, and groups vary across, and items vary across, and all that kind of stuff. So, to be curlier, here's an equation. Your very first one. It's the simplest one we can possibly have. I call this an empty model because there's nothing in it. So the fixed intercept beta 0 here, if I know nothing else about a person, what's my best guess for their outcome? Yeah, the mean. So that's what this becomes. E is how wrong you are. So if you're way above the mean, your E is positive. If you're way below the mean, your E is negative. And we keep track of the variability across the E's as this is the variability of Y. Cool. There's one I and there's one E here because there's only one dimension of sampling that this model is designed for. So in other words, there's one pile of variance and it's all in E, because that's all we need if there's only one dimension of sampling. Okay, 2-level then. We're picking up subscripts. I is not specific enough. I stands for individual. Individual what? individual person, individual school, individual item. So this semester, our subscripts are going to be PC. Person and cluster. In your textbook and in every other damn book on the planet, it's IJ. No, it's not. Not anymore. You don't need to do that to your readers. Pick letters that stand for what they mean. They will appreciate you. So persons and clusters is what I'm going. So I still have a mean here, but I've added this new thing in the middle. This is going to be a random intercept, is what it's going to be called. And it's the idea that each cluster needs their own mean. So I've taken what was one source of variability, or one pile, and I've split it into two. So I have some graphics that show this in other further slides, but this is just the main idea. So U is how far off your cluster's mean is from the mean of the cluster means. So why are some groups higher on Y than other groups? I don't know, that's in here. And then from there, once you get to your cluster mean as a point of prediction, E is how far off you are from your cluster mean. Are you relatively good at math or relatively bad? So the total variability, for instance, in like math, if that's my outcome, doesn't change from here to here. What changes is what we attribute it to. How much of the variability has to do with the school you go to, how much it has to do with you. That'll be the first thing we try to figure out, is the relative amounts of both. So that's where we're headed. Exciting, huh? How are we doing? Thumb check. Okay, everyone is above vertical at least, or at vertical. I'll take it. Oh, horizontal. This is horizontal. There we go. I always remember that because I'm vertically challenged. That's how. Although I'm told by the Zoomers that they thought I'd be taller in person, so apparently I have tall person energy. I'll go with that. But. Anywho, it is 1:45, which means it's time for me to be quiet. Any last minute questions before we adjourn for the day? Yes?
Sorry, but can I take 1 minute to talk about GMAS?
Yes, please do.
Here in the EMS program, we have a student group called GMAS, that stands for Graduate Measurement and Statistics Students Group. We have meetings once a month, the first Friday of each month. There you can find another students in the EMS program, either in the PhD or the master's program. So if you can go there, you are welcome. We have discussions, we have special speakers, and we try to build a net between or among students in the EMS program. And you will receive more information from our communications chair, Mubarak, this week, because our first meeting is next Friday, September 5th.
Great. Are you still doing free pizza?
Yes. We
Okay.
have food and
Food.
drinks. So you can go there. Our meetings are between 3 p.m. and 4 p.m. And you will see that we also have a Discord group in the EMS program in which you can share different questions or you can ask for resources. And as I told you, we are trying to build a net among students, so you are welcome there.
Great. So
Thank you.
GMAS, Fridays from 3 to
If
4,
you do not get
professional
any
development
messages
pizza.
from us, you can reach out to anyone of us, either with me, Erica, or me, and say, oh, I do not get message from GMAS. And we can
Great.
look
And
at
you
it.
don't have to be an EMS to come, right? Anybody can come?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
You're welcome.
So, yes, come make friends.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for being here, folks. See you Thursday, I hope. Right? You're going to come back?
Absolutely.
Okay. Wonderful.